It's at no cost while the outage is in effect.
The outage is the result of a cyber attack on a vendor that authorizes prescription payments through Medicaid. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average barely down on the day, and the NASDAQ is barely up right now. And our KSL weather, after our storm tonight, things are going to warm right up through the rest of the week. That's next. KSL News Time 101.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Les Olson IT has the office technology you need to take your business to the next level. Protect your business with state-of-the-art security cameras, sensors, alarms, and access control protocols. Get peace of mind with cybersecurity from our elite IT services team. Reach the next level of productivity, security, and success with Les Olson IT. Learn more at lesolson.com.
Sometimes when our furnace stops working, it's something simple we can fix ourselves, if we only knew how. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and the next time your furnace stops working, before you call a company out to fix it, try this first. Go shut the furnace down and make sure your air filter is clean. Go around the house and make sure the vents are open and there's nothing blocking the return air. If it's been a while since you've changed the batteries in your thermostat, go ahead and do that too. Then go turn the furnace back on, and if it stays on, you're probably good. If it stops working again, you're probably going to want a technician to check it out. If you don't know one, Any Hour Services has a special offer for any homeowners listening. One of our HVAC technicians will diagnose and troubleshoot your furnace for only $29. Then they'll explain what they found and present you with repair options. And don't worry, our technicians service all brands. Call Any Hour Services and let them know you heard about this $29 troubleshooting special on the radio. 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Good morning. I'm the 40% off window company.
40% off? Of what?
Hey, 40% off.
Yeah, I'll bet it's your biggest sale of the year. This week only, because you need a model home in our neighborhood. Well, nothing. It's baloney. Hi, this is Kathy.
I'm Doug of Window World. When you hear those things, you know you've entered the baloney zone.
Resist the force of the baloney zone.
Find Window World online at windowworldutah.com.
Or call Window World at 281-8111. That's 281-8111.
And that's no baloney.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We are back to a quiet drive. Looking good on all the Valley freeways. No accidents and no delays. Call 866-0RES and say you want the KSL special. $33 per room cleaned and $50 off air duct cleaning. Zero Res. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Our KSL weather, clouds and rain showers move in for the evening with snow showers expected tomorrow. We could get 2 inches of snow in the valleys and a foot or more in the mountains. Highs will drop into the 30s. Right now, 58 degrees and cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com for Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
We often begin the program by reminding you that we only talk about politics so we can explore society, and we explore society so we can get down deep into the principles and the people in this country who actually live them. To get to that kind of conversation, today we're going to do the short circuit, and we're going to go straight to principles. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, it's time to think again about what we think we know when it comes to navigating difficult conversations. And someone who has spent a great deal of time studying just exactly how people do that and do it better, Todd Davis, former Chief People Officer and Senior Consultant at Franklin Covey, joins us on the line. And Todd, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Boyd. Appreciate the opportunity of being here again.
You've got an extraordinary module talking about navigating difficult conversations. How do you turn that tension into progress? And give us a little bit of the backstory. A lot of people use this phrase a lot. How are we going to navigate this difficult conversation? You can insert family, you can insert politics, insert business, insert neighborhood or community. Give us the baseline in terms of where we should begin from a principle standpoint in thinking about those conversations.
Yeah, great question. So the obvious inclination that we all have is to avoid them. As you mentioned, I was the chief people officer for 18 years, and so a large part of my job was to have these difficult conversations, and even that being such a huge part of my role, it was just, gosh, maybe if we wait, this will go away. And they don't go away; they only get worse. And so we step into this, and again, I'm no smarter than the next person, but because my role entails this, I have thousands, if not more than that, of reps on this. But it's really starting out with courage and consideration and thinking, okay, what is the purpose of this? What do I need? Why do I need to have this conversation? And what does the other person need? If it's a performance problem, what do I need? Well, I need this person on our team to perform better. But what do they need? Well, they need to have honest feedback, but also know at the same time that I'm concerned and want only the best for them. So it's this balance, this mindset to start out with of having both the courage we need, which is really hard when we're having a difficult conversation, and then the consideration for the other person.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the fact that all of your work has been so focused on how do we get the skill set, the tool set, the mindset to make all of these things happen. And one of the things I think is really important is how you tee it up in terms of framework and the fact that we all have to remember if we're having a difficult conversation, it means that we care deeply about something, and it means the other person probably cares deeply about something as well. And that's actually something we should celebrate rather than avoid.
Boy, you just hit on the key principle there. Something's at stake. Or many things are at stake, but to acknowledge that something's at stake, the person's performance, their reputation, my reputation, what our future relationship will look. And so if we can look at what's at stake here and then realize, the emotions that are going to come up during this conversation are because there's something important to one or both of us. And then we can make it less about the person and more about the topic at hand. So it's a really, really good point you bring up.
And so as you look at going through and starting to navigate that, because, again, once we decide we're going to lean in to the difficult conversation rather than avoid, and we always say, you can hope it goes away. Hope's great, but hope is not a strategy. Walk us through some of the strategies that we should be leaning into so that we can take those crucial conversations, those important even tense conversations, and turn them into something that leads us towards progress.
Yeah. So once we've established, okay, why are we having the conversation? Why is it so important? Why am I feeling so anxious about it? Once we get real clear on that, because I mentioned that because occasionally, not often, occasionally I'll work with a leader who will say, well, I want to have this because they need to know how I feel. Okay. And why? Well, because I just want them to know how mad I was. Okay, but what's your purpose? What's the intent? And that doesn't happen often, but sometimes it's just because we want to feel good.
Right.
But if we can clarify, no, I really want them to succeed. I want them to improve their performance, or I want us to come to an agreement on this thing that we're at odds with, if it's with another colleague. Once we got to that part, then it's all about our intent. And Boyd, I have found in my 18 years as chief people officer, and even now as a senior consultant, if your intent is pure, meaning healthy, like I want something good for both of us, you can, in fact, say almost anything to someone. If you begin a conversation with saying, hey, Boyd, I want you, this is going to be a little bit difficult, this conversation, but I want you to know my only intent is to help us get on the same page or to help you be the very best, whatever role you're in that you can be. Please know that that's my only intent. And once you say that, and if you really mean it, you can get to the hard stuff.
Yeah, that's so vital because it changes the whole dynamic because suddenly it's not an us, them, me, you kind of back and forth battle where we're just butting heads, but we can actually get into a different kind of space. You talk about some of the tactics and strategies around these principles, and one set that I just love that I think we all need to deploy much more often is just to pause and then be quick to observe. I think that observing is such a lost art in the world today, but describe that for our listeners as to why that's so important.
Yeah, another key point you bring up. Many of us hesitate. We think if we pause and just listen or observe and, like we say, don't judge, that the person's going to think we're agreeing with them. And that it's not true. I know it might feel like it's not true. If we will just listen, and I love the word suspend, because if we suspend our point of view or our emotions long enough to really hear the other person, we can get the real issues out there on the table. And so, to your point, pause, we call it pause, don't panic, because when emotions start showing up, we sometimes panic. But pause, don't panic, observe and don't judge, and then ask. Don't just assume you know the answer. And if we can spend that time just listening to understand, not to agree or disagree, we can start to then open the door to get to the heart of the real issue, or what really needs to happen. Or if we're in a leadership position, we can open the door to then really say, I know this is hard. You do a lot of things really great. This is really a problem. We got to get this fixed. And you can say those things if you've really taken time to understand the person, and, like I said earlier, made sure they know your only intention is to help them be even more successful than they've already been.
Yeah, no question. So just to review for our listeners, pause, don't panic, observe, don't judge. That suspend, I think, is such a beautiful imagery to be at there. And then ask, don't assume. And when you ask, so it's amazing what you can do with a question. I think you can do more with a question than you can a statement, especially in a heated disagreement. You can actually share your perspective with hey, have we considered this, or what would happen if we tried that? Give us one thing just in our last minute here in terms of things that we ought to be thinking differently about individually, in our organizations, in society, as we try to navigate those difficult conversations.
Yeah. That's a great way to frame that. I'll make sure I say something really important here. But just remember, while there may be a few really, truly bad, evil people out there, most people are good. Most people want to do the right thing, want to be a part of something that's successful. And clearly we may have a person in the wrong seat on the bus, but usually it's more a case of not people that they've previously talked to not having the courage to speak up and say, gosh, I really want to bring something to your attention. So if we start with the mindset of everyone has something to offer, and I'm doing this, I'm having this conversation to help them see what they may not be seeing. And even though they may feel resentment to me for a little bit, if I continue and my intent is sincere, they're going to know that I'm looking out for their best interest, and that's why I'm initiating the conversation instead of avoiding it.
I love it. Todd Davis is a former Chief People Officer, Senior Consultant at Franklin Covey. Franklin Covey, this is a great module, Navigating Difficult Conversations, Turn Tension into Progress. Todd, thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to have you back, and we may even send you to Washington, D.C. to help out with a few things as well. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, right. Hey, thank you so much, Boyd. A pleasure talking to you.
All right. Again, that's Todd Davis from Franklin Covey. And I think it's so important. We're going to apply this through the rest of the show today, because these same things of navigating these difficult conversations apply to the Supreme Court, to agencies within our government, to politics, to elected officials, to businesses, to our communities, right to the kitchen table. So stay with us. Much more Inside Sources coming up next.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. The nationally ranked Cougars are on a roll.
Foose dives low, wait, up, and good! Drops it over the 10 for 2.
Tuesday, it's BYU at the Kansas Jayhawks.
Robinson, long three. Oh, man! He just made a 30-footer!
Pregame is at 5 and tip-off at 6. Listen Tuesday, BYU, Kansas Jayhawks on Utah's legacy home of Big 12 basketball and the BYU Cougars. KSL News Radio.
Okay, that's good. Whoa, Dave!
Sorry, I'll go grab some paper towels. You can't let Dave pour things. He works at JCW's. They fill stuff up past the brim over there, like their milkshakes. They're thick, rich, and oh my gosh.
Delicious?
Oh no. Dave's filling up Crystal's car for her.
Dave, stop!
Hey, this is Clark for JCW. Stop into any of our 5 locations today. We're located in American Fork, Thanksgiving Point, Provo, South Jordan, and our new location in Harriman. Come in and see why at JCW's we believe in quality, and a lot of it.
There are so many things that set Euromax cabinets apart from any other cabinet provider. The details can be a bit overwhelming, but let me give you a small sample. Each of their boxes are made from laminate with high-strength pressed wood core. They band all 4 edges of each piece using a waterproof and heat-resistant PUR glue that's the best in the industry. Their process virtually eliminates water damage, chipping, and greatly extends the life of your investment. Their LED lights are inset flush, so they look amazing wherever you put them. Whether it's inside glass cabinets, under the wall cabinets, or in the toe kicks, nothing adds a more luxurious feeling than lighting done correctly. When it comes to the face of your cabinets, the sky's the limit. They have access to all the cutting-edge products in the market. Simply put, the finest cabinet to be built and installed in the state of Utah. Go see their showroom in Pleasant Grove or start shopping their product at EuromaxFurniture.com. That's EuromaxFurniture.com. Euromax, built for you.
Are you stressing about your IRS tax problems? Have you received notices from the IRS threatening to garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, or seize your property? You need an ally. Allies Tax Relief has tax attorneys and enrolled agents that are ready to fight for you. They have saved millions for taxpayers just like you. Allies Tax Relief can help put a stop to IRS collections and, most importantly, negotiate your tax debt. Here's Brenda, a happy client of Allies Tax Relief.
I owed the IRS around $57,000, and they're about to start garnishing my paychecks. I heard a commercial on the radio about Allies Tax Relief, so I thought I'd give them a call. After a day, they were able to at least stop the garnishments, and after a few months of negotiations, I walked away owing the IRS only $301.
If you owe the IRS, call Allies Tax Relief right now for your free consultation. Call 800-230-5174. 800-230-5174. That's 800-230-5174.
This is Trent Reed with Ryan Valuation, formerly Economics Partners. We built one of the premier valuation firms in the country, then were acquired by Ryan Tax, for a great valuation, by the way. Now, as Ryan Valuation, we're the same top valuation practice with the resources of a global firm. Love him or hate him, or anything in between, if Trump had hired us, he wouldn't have New York claiming he owes them $354 million. I'm half kidding, but in all seriousness, there is no better team to hire for your valuation needs than my team. Whether you're an attorney needing help with litigation over a valuation matter, a business owner or executive needing your company valued for tax, financial reporting, or strategic reasons, a private equity partner needing valuation of your portfolio, or an accountant with a client needing a valuation, Ryan Valuation is the right call. We're headquartered here in Utah, but do our work nationwide. To hire the best, email us at valuations@ryan.com. That's valuations@ryan.com.
2 years ago, Americans watched in horror as a crisis unfolded at the Kabul airport.
She was tear-gassed and beaten.
Images of thousands desperate to escape Taliban oppression filled our news feeds. More than 80,000 Afghans made it to America. But the story didn't end there.
It was very cold. There was no power, no heat.
Who would help our newest neighbors? I'm Andrea Smartin. In Stranger Becomes Neighbor, you'll hear the stories of some remarkable refugees who left their homes and their dreams behind, only to start over from zero.
Their only possession was 3 blankets.
And you'll meet Americans who stepped up to help them.
You want me to come when you deliver your baby.
What can one person do in the face of an international disaster decades in the making? That's Stranger Becomes Neighbor. Find us at kslpodcast.com, follow us on Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, there's a tentative agreement in place for a ceasefire in Gaza that could lead to the release of more Israeli hostages held for months by Hamas. Second, Utah State Health Department is working to get prescriptions to Medicaid patients after a computer glitch kept them from filling them at regular pharmacies. And third, a bill in the legislature likely spells the end of a proposal to dredge up islands in Utah Lake. Right now, 58 degrees and cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and as we march our way towards one more round of the Shutdown Showdown, we started the program today with Todd Davis from Franklin Covey talking about how do you navigate difficult conversations, and I think we may need to send Todd back to D.C. For some of these conversations. And the interesting thing that we want to get to as we go through the program today is, again, getting back to the principles of how do you do these things. It's not controlling behavior by way of government or by mandate. it's living these principles. And one of the interesting things that was pointed out in a fantastic piece in Politico today by our friend Jennifer Haberkorn, who's the White House reporter for Politico, and she actually writes on the relationship between the Biden administration and Capitol Hill. And today she talked about the fact that President Biden and Speaker of the House Johnson really don't have a relationship. And so that's where we want to begin. Jennifer, welcome back to the show.
Great to be with you, Boyd.
Fantastic piece today, and you must have been reading our minds today because we wanted to get to these principles. And it is the fact that, D.C. in general has become so transactional of late. But dig us into this as it relates to President Biden and Speaker of the House Johnson and how that might impact our current version of the shutdown showdown.
Yeah, where we got started with this was, think back to relationships of a long time ago. Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan is the telltale example of, bipartisanship, people working across the aisle, the Speaker of the House, the president of different parties, and they worked together where they could and they squared off where they couldn't. And, that doesn't really exist anymore. There are very few bipartisan relationships. It's really unusual to see a Republican and a Democrat getting together and being friends and yet having political differences. But you look here at President Biden and Speaker Johnson, and granted, Speaker Johnson is very new on the scene. No one expected him to be Speaker of the House, but there's no relationship that is formed between him and the president. And the Speaker has been trying to get a one-on-one meeting with the president. The White House has so far refused that invitation. But we are going to see them sit down this week with the other congressional leaders, and we're just 4 days away from another potential government shutdown. And the fact that this, top Republican, top Democrat, you don't have a relationship, don't even have like back channel, top aides who can talk to each other, really doesn't bode well for trying to bridge that divide and keeping the government funded beyond Friday.
Yeah, and I think it's so fascinating. I love the way you pointed this out in your piece that it really is one of the hallmarks of President Biden's career has been both the relationship side on the outward facing, but also the really interconnected back channels that he's been able to navigate over his time in the Senate as vice president. And so this is really an aberration, I think, in terms of how he approaches things. Any hope on the horizon in terms of just the two of them getting in the room beyond just we always call it the law firm of Schumer, McConnell, Johnson, and Jeffries. Any chance of the real connection happening there?
It's not promising because Johnson, has asked for this one-on-one meeting, and Biden, he made a comment to reporters last week saying, sure, I'd be happy to meet if he has anything to say. And then his aides followed up and insinuated that Johnson wasn't working in good faith. He's like, the president's press secretary said something along the lines of, if he is demonstrating good faith, he would hold a vote. And, they've just traded barbs over the past week. We saw President Biden at a fundraiser refer to congressional Republicans as segregationists, liking them to Strom Thurmond. And Johnson responded on Twitter, I should say X, formerly known as Twitter, saying, Biden was dealing from a race card from the bottom of the deck. So there's just a lot of that going on. So it's hard to see any kind of back channeling, good communication forming. But I should say Biden has been at this for a very long time. He has a good relationship with Mitch McConnell, the top Republican in the Senate. So he certainly knows how to do this.
Yeah.
I think it's a question, too, of how long Mike Johnson remains in his role. We know that his predecessor, Kevin McCarthy, was there for such a short period of time. It is legitimate to question, is this a relationship worth forming?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you raised that because there is sort of, again, when you're dealing with things in terms of transactions, if it doesn't look like that person's going to be around for long, then you just take whatever transactions you get and you move on to whoever's next. And I think that's become part of the dysfunction there. Anything that you're seeing or anything you're watching for, particularly going into tomorrow's meeting, that might indicate where we're headed as we kind of barrel our way once again towards the showdown Friday?
Yeah, because this will be a pretty high-profile meeting, I think it's really doubtful that they're going to come out of this and say, finished it up, guys. Like, we can go home and just get this done. So, I would certainly expect that coming out of this meeting, both sides are going to fall into their usual camps of talking points, Democrats saying, Republicans need to just fund the government. Republicans saying Democrats just need to get on board with our plan to fund the government. So if they come out of this meeting saying those talking points, I don't think that's a sign that there's certainly going to be a shutdown. After a meeting like this is typically staff kind of behind the scenes will try to push the ball forward, working across the aisle. But certainly if this meeting goes really south and, there's throwing glasses afterward, then that's, it's harder to see that staff back channeling happening. So we'll certainly know a bit about how things are going after this meeting, but it's not going to be conclusive.
Yeah, for sure. And Jennifer, last question for you, because I think this is something that, again, another part of the lost art back there in D.C. is the art of the relationship back channel. From your inside sources there, as you talk to people behind the scenes, do you see any players, without having to name names, any players that are going to step up and play that role of relationship in the back channel pieces, which again are so important to the front channel things actually getting something done?
The person that I keep my eye on in this moment is Shalonda Young. She's the president's budget director, and she's very well liked on Capitol Hill. She used to be a staffer on Capitol Hill for the Democrats. And she's from Louisiana, which is where Mike Johnson is from as well. And she has relationships with Steve Scalise, one of the number 2 Republican in the House, who's also from Louisiana. And given that, this topic is her wheelhouse, the president's budget, and that she has relationships on Capitol Hill, she's someone that I'm kind of eyeing as a potential bridge between the two camps.
Yeah. Oh, that is fantastic. And you're not going to hear that anywhere else, folks. That's why we have Jennifer on this show. That is great. Very astute observation. And that is, I think Shalonda is the one who could actually navigate all of that. And you connected all the dots to Scalise, to the speaker, to the president, to the budget, and that's how these things, the staffers get things done, and that's just the way we go about it.
You make it sound so easy, Boyd.
Yeah, that's right. Now, if we can just get this done before Friday, or even Thursday, I'd be happy. That'd be great.
Right.
All right. Jennifer Haberkorn, White House reporter for Politico, always focused on that relationship between the Biden administration and Capitol Hill. It's great writing. It's fantastic reporting. It's great behind-the-scenes pieces. Check out her piece at Politico today as well. Jennifer, as always, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Have a good one.
All right. Again, that's Jennifer Haberkorn, and she's the best. And I hope you just noticed how she connected all the dots behind the scenes, because the relationship on the front end doesn't currently exist between President Biden and Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. And so if you don't have that, that's a tough place to negotiate from, because you're just dealing with transactions, and that becomes very political very fast. So you have to go back channel. And so who's the back channel person who isn't just doing transactions and politics? It's someone who can build the relationships. And so those are some important things to watch as we work our way towards Friday. And we have to get a deal done before we get to another round of the Shutdown Showdown. We'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour: more liquor licenses will be issued in Utah after legislation passed on Friday. Now, the president of the Utah chapter of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, Art Brown, lost a grandson to DUI, and he's worried about the ripple effects of this bill.
You put more impaired drivers on the street.
The additional liquor licenses will be issued over the next 7 years. Brown says he's happy there will be other legislative sessions in coming years where they will plan on challenging that. A moose was struck twice in Mountain Green, Utah. The moose first collided with one car, bounced off the windshield, collided with another, traveling the opposite direction. One driver had a minor injury. The passenger of the second vehicle not hurt. The moose didn't make it. Our top national story this hour from ABC News: Israel is backing a tentative proposal for a temporary ceasefire in Gaza, and there's said to be a tentative agreement that's been reached on the framework for a ceasefire. Here's ABC News foreign correspondent Tom Sufi-Burridge in Tel Aviv.
There are still important details to be worked out. The political head of Hamas is in talks with Qatari officials today, and all the while, mediators like the United States are pushing this ahead of Ramadan, which begins in 2 weeks, a highly sensitive period of the calendar for Muslims and, of course, this region, and a time when tensions could rise.
ABC's Tom Sufi-Burridge. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down just a little, the NASDAQ up also just a bit today. And our KSL weather, look for a storm to come in tonight and drop some snow. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the 9s, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
I have diabetes. I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
I have asthma. I'm at risk too.
If you're 19 or older with chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, COPD, or heart disease, or are 65 or older, you are at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine, a Pfizer vaccine that can help protect you against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Even if you've already been vaccinated with other pneumonia vaccines, Prevnar 20 may help provide added protection. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. Side effects include pain and swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
Tonight, The Voice returns for an all-new season on NBC.
With John Legend, Chance the Rapper, and Reba McEntire.
Plus, new coaches Dan and Shay.
Ooh, the first ever duo and the first ever double chair.
Then, a classic game show returns with a huge twist.
It's the premiere of Deal or No Deal Island.
With epic challenges, hidden cases,
and $200 million at stake.
Deal or No Deal Island premieres after the return of The Voice, tonight on NBC.
Then stay tuned for KSL 5 News at 10.
Tonight on KSL, the child care crisis.
Holy cow, we are spending way too much money on child care.
Sound familiar?
We spent $3,150 a month.
And that's only if you get off a wait list.
9 months.
How can struggling families get help? KSL uncovers solutions and changes you may not know about.
More people can be eligible for that child care assistance.
Unaffordable Utah, child care crisis. Tonight on KSL 5 News at 10.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents a gallon. And here's Ricky Meeks.
We have a KSL traffic trooper reporting lights out at Highland Drive and 9400 South. Also, we have crews on the scene, including hazmat, where a tanker may be leaking some fuel. It's northbound I-15 off of 21st Street in Weber County. Lagoon is looking for ride maintenance technicians. Lagoon offers excellent mechanical training programs with amazing career opportunities. Ride maintenance technician position is full-time and year-round. Details, visit lagoonpark.com/jobs. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, clouds and rain showers move in for the evening with snow showers expected tomorrow. We could get 2 inches of snow in the valleys and a foot or more in the mountains. Highs will drop into the 30s. And right now we're at 57 degrees with cloudy skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, no matter where you fall in your perspective on immigration and border security, it is an integral part of an American conversation, and it actually has been from the very beginning. Most people don't recognize or remember that in the Declaration of Independence, once they started to get to the list of grievances of what was going wrong or what they wanted changed, the importance of immigration was way before they got to things like taxation without representation. So immigration has always mattered in this country, and right now we have a system that is flagging and failing so many. And so it's a time for a different kind of conversation about how we address that. How do we make sure we maintain the dignity of human beings and the integrity of our borders and sovereignty? What kinds of conversations should we be getting to? Well, someone who's constantly engaged in that kind of thinking, Fiona Harrigan, of course, is associate editor at Reason.com. She primarily covers immigration and foreign policy. And Fiona, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So today we want to get to your piece talking about a really crucial part of this whole conversation, and that is the green card process. Just tee that up for our listeners.
Yeah, and the source of this is a really important and eye-opening report from the Cato Institute that came out recently. And this report covers a lot of the dysfunction in the process that delegates green cards. And at a basic level, a green card is what lets someone live and work in the U.S. as a permanent resident and eventually provides a pathway to citizenship. So this is a really important step for immigrants who want to live here long term. The U.S. gives out a certain number of green cards across several different categories every single year, but several of those categories are capped, which means only a certain number can be given out every year. Demand far outweighs supply, which leads to a backlog. And that's what this Cato report really gets into. In the late 90s, there were 10 million pending applications in the green card backlog, but that backlog has now more than tripled to 34.7 million applications today. But despite that historic demand for green cards, only about 1.1 million green cards will be given out this year, which is about 3% of applicants. So this demand is a really, really good thing. It signals that there are a lot of people, whether they're employment-based applicants or family-based applicants, who want to build lives here and contribute to the economy. But our failure to meet it is a really debilitating thing for those goals. There's a lot of growth and a lot of progress that's being left on the table.
Yeah, no question about that. And I think it's so interesting when you look at a lot of the rules around this, and you pointed this out in your piece and from the Cato report, looking at some of these caps. Describe for us these caps. One, I keep trying to get my head around the fact that we have 34 plus million applications that are just pending, and only about 1 million of those can go through. Some of that is based on this idea of the caps. Explain that for us.
Right, and a lot of these caps kind of come in as only so many foreign employees can come in a given year, and jobs, and there's pretty low unemployment right now. So a lot of the reasoning behind these caps just doesn't make sense. Same for family-based applicants. Why are we denying people the opportunity to reunify with their families? And a lot of what those backlogs create is these insane wait times for people. In the Cato report, one of the most striking factoids is that Indians, who are half of the applicants in employer-sponsored categories, they might wait up to a century for a green card. So in effect, there are people who are dying long before they ever get a chance to secure permanent residency here. It's really mind-boggling.
Yeah, and you also pointed out in the piece that fewer than 1% who want to move permanently to the U.S., and they want to do it legally, less than 1% are going to actually be able to do it legally. And so, again, we create all these perverse incentives that cause people to come here illegally. But, again, a lot of these are not the things that we normally think about. You talk about this large number from India and what they would add to our communities and to our businesses and to the economy. And some of them, a century is a pretty long time to wait for a green card.
Yeah, and I will add that a lot of these people who want to adjust to green cards, they already live here. They're just on temporary work visas waiting for a green card to become available, which means that ultimately they have to renew these temporary visas, and they don't have any assurance that they're going to be here long term. If it's employment-based, they might get laid off and they might have to go home, and essentially, their work for the past decade or two has been for nothing. They don't have any way to stay here permanently. So these things are things that really, limit the economy's growth, and they also push people to be more willing to immigrate illegally, right? Because if the legal system is inaccessible, people are going to look for the easier option. And in so many cases, it is much easier to immigrate illegally than it is to immigrate here legally.
Yeah, and Fiona, I'm so glad you pointed out the fact that so many of these people are here in the country. They've come on work visas, so they're part of our communities already. They're part of our businesses already, and then they have to go through the mental gymnastics and the legal hurdles and hoops that just seem to go on forever. And again, none of that is good for anybody.
Exactly. And we should recognize that this demand for green cards, this demand for a way to stay in the country permanently is a really good thing, that we're lucky to have so much interest in, there's so much interest around the world in becoming an American and becoming a contributor to American communities and economies. And our failure to recognize that is really only to our disadvantage.
Yeah. And as you pointed out in the piece, that all of this, getting the system right, benefits everybody, including American citizens, including the American economy, and getting it right. So as you look at the path forward, what are you keeping your eye on in terms of any spaces where there might be some movement politically and congressionally that might help to start changing the dynamic in this process?
Immigration these days is so directly tied to border security and border conversations that I find that there's not a lot of room for conversations about incremental reform and little things around the margins that people can agree on across the aisle. So that's been disappointing, but I'm hoping that as people see the effects of a lethargic immigration system, a lethargic legal immigration system, that they come together and kind of settle on these common sense reforms, these things that can help the economy, that can help bring more high-skilled, highly educated workers here, family members, refugees. It extends to so many aspects of who we bring in and how we design our system. So I'm hoping that as people recognize these things, that they can kind of settle on reforms, but it's an uphill battle for sure.
It is, and I think you hit the nail right on the head there, Fiona, in terms of so much of it has been tied to border security and illegal immigration that we're often missing the point. This is one of those that always astounded me when I was there as a chief of staff, that everybody agrees. Everybody knows this is a good thing. Legal immigration is a good thing for this country, and if we could set the other political stuff on the side, we could get, as you described it, Fiona, common sense, rational, reasonable things that do both of those things, that ensure the dignity of human beings and our fellow travelers and the integrity of our borders and our laws. Those are compatible principles, and I think we can get there. Fiona, great piece today. Fiona Harrigan, of course, associate editor at Reason.com. Fiona, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Again, that's Fiona Harrigan from Reason. You need to check out her piece on the green card process. It's utterly failing, and she goes through it in just such a rational, reasonable kind of way. The statistics are astounding. 34.7 million pending applications. These are people who have come here on work visas legally. The system is broken. It needs to be fixed. We need to disconnect it from the political rhetoric and get to the principle and policy solutions that will take us right back to where we started this country on immigration. We'll be right back.
When was the last time you gave your carpet the love and attention it really deserves? Not only is your carpet one of the biggest investments in your home, but it's also the biggest air filter in your home. If your carpet hasn't been professionally cleaned, you're breathing in all sorts of nasty dirt, dander, and germs that keep recirculating again and again. Lucky for you, Zero Res is going to spread the love to you and your home with their February special. Don't think vacuuming or DIYing will suffice. Call the pros. Zero Res has over 7,400 Google reviews with a 4.8 rating. This month, it's $33 per room cleaned, plus a fourth room free with promo code 4FREE24. And don't forget about your air ducts. Take $50 off your air duct cleaning with promo code CLEAN-AIR. Call ZeroRes, 866-ZERO-RES, or online at ZeroRes.com and say you want the KSL special. ZeroRes. Spelled backwards or forwards, it's the right way to clean.
KSL Broadcast Group contests are open to participants 13 years of age and older that are residents of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada, unless otherwise specified. Employees or agents of the station, Bonneville International Corporation, or other area radio stations, or any entity associated with the contest may not enter. Persons who have won in the last 90 days from a station contest or event are not eligible. Full general contest rules are available at kslnewsradio.com.
Guys, did you know your testosterone affects everything in your system, including how you feel and perform every day? Right now, Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City will check your testosterone for free. Knowing your T levels is the first step in understanding if you have low T. Your testosterone level impacts your energy, libido, sleep, weight, hair loss, mood, and even ED. Maintaining an appropriate T level can change your whole life. Most men start to see changes in their hormone levels in their 30s. Experience and results matter. So what are you waiting for? Get your T levels checked today by local, experienced, and trusted men's health experts. They've helped thousands of men since 2011. They're so confident they can help you, they even guarantee it. Call Revive today and schedule your free testosterone test, free exam, and free consultation. Call Revive Men's Health at 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Derek Overstreet, founder of the New Millennium Group. We're a financial planning firm. Listen, we're fiduciaries. We have advisors standing by right now to take your call. That's 888-999-6370. 888-999-6370. The reason you're going to want to call is we're going to help you retire 3 to 5 years before you thought possible. Now, imagine how that would be if you could actually retire 3 to 5 years sooner than your plan was. The way we do this is by putting together a step-by-step plan, taking into consideration any rental properties that you have, any pension income that you have, your Social Security. Listen, we put that all together for you in writing. It will allow us to build your income based on inflation. You know, inflation has been rapidly rising. You and I both need a plan that whatever we start out our income at, in 5 or 10 years, we're going to need 40% more income. So if you're one of those people listening and you'd like a plan in writing, give us a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370, or go to utahsfinancialplanner.com.
American energy is under attack. Joe Biden has waged a war on American natural resources and made it harder to produce affordable, reliable, and clean energy right here in Utah. Our energy prices are already going up. Biden's policies will make it worse. But Republican John Curtis has our back. There is no greater supporter of unleashing American energy than John Curtis. John Curtis knows our abundant natural resources help keep us free and safe, powers our economy, keeps the lights on, and keeps Utah on the move. John Curtis is Utah tough. He's taken the fight to Joe Biden and the Washington politicians who all want to hurt American energy. And now we need a conservative to take the fight to the United States Senate. We need Republican John Curtis, a strong defender of American energy dominance in the fight for us.
Paid for by Clear Path Action Fund. Not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Tim and Amanda.
Do I look forward to reporting the news? Yes, insofar as it helps me understand what's happening.
We know that it's important information that's going to impact people's lives, and so that makes the job of reporting the news that day easier.
Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, families of drunk driving victims are asking the state not to issue any new liquor licenses. Second, 1 unlucky moose got hit by cars going opposite directions in Morgan County. And third, there's a possible agreement taking shape on a ceasefire in the Gaza war. Could mean the release of more Israeli hostages. Right now, 57 degrees and cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. And as we've been going through the day today, the Supreme Court has been hearing some pretty interesting, pretty fascinating cases from Texas and Florida about social media. And obviously, we've had some of those same conversations here in the state of Utah. The Supreme Court is hearing cases from Texas and Florida concerning the social media regulations, their opposition, the social media platforms. The issue has been posed under protecting the First Amendment. So how far can state regulation go before it becomes censorship? Reports from D.C. today are saying that the Supreme Court, based on the questioning of the justices, seems to be leaning away from the state's cases in favor of the First Amendment as opposed to state regulators being able to drive some of those things. I think there's a deeper conversation here as well, and that is we keep falling back to how do we control the behavior as opposed to how do we change what we're worried about. And if we're forever trying to move the needle to control the behavior, it's not going to change the behavior. And whether it's misinformation or disinformation, whether it's things that are vulgar or outrageous or outlandish, all of that continues to go through. And I don't think there's a path of regulatory regimes that can actually fix that. I think it's a different conversation inside our own homes and neighborhoods, schoolrooms and classrooms and other places that are actually going to drive that in the end. And so the interesting thing, and several reports out from the Washington Post, from the New York Times, noting that the justices from really across the ideological spectrum appear likely to prevent Texas and Florida from being able to implement laws that restrict social media giants from removing certain political or controversial posts on their platforms. Even as the justices, again, across the political spectrum seem to express concern about the power that these platforms have in public debate. I think one of the big challenges and one of the big tests is what is it that a private company can do versus what a state or what a federal government can do when it comes to speech. And I think you can see that in some of the questioning that was raised. Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, said that whether the government or social media companies have the power to decide which voices are heard on a particular platform, he said the First Amendment always puts a thumb on the scale when that question is asked, and it's always on the side of private companies. The First Amendment, Roberts said, prohibits government, doesn't prohibit private entities from censoring speech. And so that distinction, I think, is really important. And in both the Florida and the Texas cases, that really is the question in terms of what can a state government do as it relates to those social media platforms. I also thought it was interesting that Justice Samuel Alito, when he was questioning some of those representing NetChoice, who represents the tech industry, really tried to get into defining some of the terms, asking whether a term like content moderation, what that really meant. Did content moderation just mean censorship, or did content moderation mean editorial discretion? Those are very different things. And Justice Alito and some of those responding for NetChoice made the comment that look, when the government does that, it can be censorship. Content, quote, content moderation really can be a form of censorship when applied by a government. When it's done by a private entity, then it's a different conversation. Does that become editorial control? Does that become brand protection? There's a host of things that can get into there. So I think it's a fascinating conversation that we're going to continue to watch play out back in Washington, D.C., and between the idea of free speech and social media platforms. And so that's going to be the interesting part of that conversation. And the thing that I keep coming back to is if all we're trying to do is control behavior, it doesn't work. It doesn't change behavior. And if we're always looking to Washington to solve the problem or to fix it, that's rarely going to, if ever, going to work. But when we talk about the principles, we help people understand the why behind those kinds of things, then things do start to change. And it actually leads us into this space that I have really been noodling on over the weekend, and that is this whole addiction we have in our society to chaos. There's kind of this nihilism It's sort of the old NASCAR thing that you show up at a NASCAR race in hopes that a really epic crash is going to happen. And sadly, our modern politics has become the same. Social media has become the same thing. Cable news nationally has become the same thing. What's the big crash? What's the big performative politics moment that's going to change the game? And suddenly we have this need for chaos. And sadly, this leads us into a dangerous space. Because when we get addicted to chaos, again, no government control, no platform control by a social media company is going to control it, because the goalposts will keep moving, and the scale of what is outrageous will continue to slide. But the real danger is what happens within us individually and as a society. When we become addicted to the chaos, then we become far more willing to participate in the chaos. And social media tends to be a place where that happens all day long, every day long. Because you get something, and because it maybe says something about someone you dislike politically, you're more likely to share it, regardless of whether it's true or not. Just because it's epic. Wow, watch this. This will cause these people to go crazy. I'm going to own those liberals. I'm going to own those conservatives. I'm going to make their hair on fire. I'm going to get their blood to boil. Watch this. And then you post something which may not even have a scintilla of truth to it, but you're doing it because you want to see the chaos. And then here's where we end. The ending of that is we become so past feeling, and the science on this is so solid, that when you have that chaos fed up to you over and over and over again, it stops being outrageous, and you stop perceiving it as chaos, and you get to that space where you are past feeling. And then chaos is really in charge, and then no amount of government control, no amount of government regulation, no amount of a social media platform regulation is going to change the game. So this ever-increasing need for chaos is a significant problem. And we cannot look to states or to the federal government or even to the social media platforms to fix it for us. It starts with all of us being committed to a different kind of conversation. When I say us, I mean all of us individually. And then it goes to community, it goes to businesses, it goes to the media, it goes to journalism, it goes to political people, elected officials. It goes up and down, left to right. Everybody's responsible. And when we're all responsible, we have a different kind of conversation. And we'll begin to eliminate the addiction to chaos and the dopamine hits that we all get when we turn on cable news or we go to doom scroll through our social media feed. And no regulatory regime, no behavioral controls is going to fix that. That will only change when we start to talk about the principles and the relationships and the connections that actually matter. So fascinating stuff going on at the Supreme Court today. I don't think controlling the behavior will change the behavior. I think that's going to start as a cottage industry in all of our communities. What are you going to do about that today? All right, we'll step aside for some top-of-the-hour news. When we come back, hour number 2 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. A truck hauling drain oil spilled a lot of it onto 21st Street just off I-15 in Ogden this afternoon. David Reed with the Weber Fire District says it was a slippery situation.
It was a lot of slosh going through, and it came off the truck and onto the ground. and it turned the road like black ice. They said it was as slippery as black ice.
UDOT responded by dumping sand on the spill while a commercial cleanup business is coming in to finish the job. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. U.S. and coalition forces hit additional targets in Yemen over the weekend, hoping to stop the attacks on military and commercial shipping in the Red Sea. General Pat Ryder at the Pentagon.
Coalition forces targeted 8 locations and struck 18 targets, which included Houthi underground weapons storage facilities, missile storage facilities, one-way attack unmanned aerial systems, air defense systems radars, and a helicopter.
The Houthi rebels firing missiles at ships are believed to be supplied and trained by Iran. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down on the day. NASDAQ has now slipped into negative territory as well. And our KSL weather, a storm moving in tonight. Will drop some snow by tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:01.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
It's game time, and you're in the locker room ready to take the field. Suddenly, you notice a player you don't recognize. He's wearing your team's jersey, and he even knows your name, but you've never seen him before until now. Would you trust this stranger with your team's playbook? Because that's exactly how phishing scams work. The first quarter of 2022 saw the highest volume of phishing attacks ever recorded. Protect your business with the Les Olson Security Suite from Les Olson IT. Learn more about it at lesolson.com.
This Monday Tax Tip is brought to you by Susan Spears, CEO of the Utah Association of CPAs.
Tax deductions allow you to lower your taxable income and are subtracted from your adjusted gross income. There are 2 main types of tax deductions, the standard deduction and itemized deductions. The IRS will let you claim one type of deduction. For 2023, the standard deduction for taxpayers filing single or married filing separately is $13,850. For heads of households, it's $20,800. Taxpayers who are 65 or blind, the additional amount is $1,850. This number changes if you're married filing jointly. For taxpayers who are married and filing jointly, the deduction is $27,000. Contact your CPA.
Get the most out of your income tax preparation when you hire a CPA. Go to uacpa.org to find a CPA that's right for you. That's uacpa.org. Listen to KSL on Monday for more tax tips from the Utah Association of CPAs.
Without the ones like you who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Tired of hearing scary radio ads about the IRS? Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000 or $500,000, we have a solution. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS with zero risk to you. If we can't reduce your tax debt, then you pay nothing. We have a 5-star rating on Google and Yelp and an A+ with a BBB. End your tax nightmare today by visiting TRA.com or call 800-583-6681. That's 800-583-6681.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Right now, we are looking at a crash-free, delay-free drive on all the Valley freeways. I took a peek at some of the higher elevations, I-80 and Parley's, Big and Little Cottonwood, and Provo Canyon, and so far, dry road conditions. Call 8660-RES and say you want the KSL special. $33 per room cleaned and $50 off air duct cleaning. Zero res. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, clouds and rain showers move in this evening with snow showers expected by tomorrow. We could get 2 inches of snow in the valleys and a foot or more in the mountains. Highs will drop into the 30s. Right now, 57 degrees and mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com for Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, the headlines from over the weekend were, of course, that former President Donald Trump won the state of South Carolina, Republican primary there. But we want to get past the headline of that. What do the numbers tell us underneath all of that? And then, of course, the campaign shifts to Michigan and then on to Super Tuesday. Michigan has been a swing state in the last several presidential cycles. So the question rolling into what comes next, starting tomorrow in Michigan, is what happens on the Republican side, and does President Biden, for some reason, have a little bit of something to worry about in Michigan? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, as we recap a little bit of what happened over the weekend, get underneath the headlines of the win. Of course, the former president won by about 20 points, beating former Ambassador Nikki Haley. About 60-40 was the way that broke down. The Haley campaign did exceed expectations. They were down about 35 points rolling into the primary contest in South Carolina. So she beat expectations there, and she has vowed to continue on the conversation and the debate as it rolls towards Super Tuesday. So we want to break that down underneath the headlines. What are the things we should be watching and following in the days ahead? So let's start with Nikki Haley's speech after her South Carolina results came in.
I know 40% is not 50%, but I also know 40% is not some tiny group. There are huge numbers of voters in our Republican primaries who are saying they want an alternative. I said earlier this week that no matter what happens in South Carolina, I would continue to run for president. I'm a woman of my word.
That's Nikki Haley following the results coming in South Carolina. And I think that's an important point. 40% is not nothing. 40% is a significant, and it does show a little bit of the split inside of the Republican Party. I think it's interesting to note that if you went to the general election in South Carolina in 2016 and in 2020, then candidate Donald Trump in 2016 defeated Hillary Clinton there by about 56% of the vote. In 2020, former president beat current president about the same, 56%. But that's in an entire statewide race for the presidency. And the fact that the former president could only get to 59% in just a Republican primary shows that there is a little bit of an undercurrent there that is dissatisfied, is not rallying around the person who is ahead. I think that means you keep going. You keep having the debate, and you keep the contest rolling along. Nikki Haley also emphasized how early we are in the process and contrasted herself to both President Biden and former President Trump.
South Carolina has spoken. We're the fourth state to do so. In the next 10 days, another 21 states and territories will speak. They have the right to a real choice, and I have a duty to give them that choice. We can't afford 4 more years of Biden's failures or Trump's lack of focus.
So a lot of focus on the chaos from both the former president and the current president. And I think that's an interesting debate that will start to play out in an important state like Michigan, which, again, is always one of those swing states that will determine who ultimately ends up in the White House in November. I think you're going to hear a lot from the Nikki Haley campaign in the days ahead about it's one thing for the former president to win primaries in the spring, but the only thing that matters is you have to be able to win a general election on the first Tuesday of November in the fall. Now, the former president spoke after his win in South Carolina, and he said he thinks the Republican Party is united.
But now there's a spirit that I have never seen. We ran 2 great races, but there's never been a spirit like this. And I just want to say that I have never seen the Republican Party so unified as it is right now.
So, interesting statement from the former president in a 60-40 win in South Carolina. Of course, it was a 44 race in New Hampshire. And so I don't know that means ultimate unanimity coming out of the Republicans. I think there are plenty who are still keeping their eye towards the fall and towards November. And those potential matchups are also pretty stark and pretty interesting under the surface. Currently, you have it basically a toss-up between the former and the current president, if that were the head-to-head matchup on the first Tuesday of November. But Nikki Haley versus the current president, Joe Biden, she wins by double digits. And so that's interesting. Now, whether that would hold up through the course, you have to play the game and play it out. So Nikki Haley sort of has the reverse challenge of not just trying to win in the fall. It's clear she can win in the fall. The question is, can she win enough in the spring to become the nominee? And so that will be the debate, and that will be the test. And it will be interesting to see the case that she makes, including coming here to Utah in a couple of days, and what the message is in terms of why she's there and what comes next in terms of the crucial conversation for the country. That will be the specific piece. Now, I want to go to the Democratic side of the aisle because while most people are giving a little bit of a yawn in terms of the primary contests for President Biden, he's clearly going to be the nominee for the Democrats, but he is bumping up against some really interesting headwinds when it comes to Michigan. And while he's not going to be challenged in terms of losing tomorrow in Michigan, there is a message being sent from people in Michigan, including Representative Rashida Tlaib, who released a video urging Michigan voters to vote uncommitted in the Democratic primary tomorrow.
It is also important to create a voting bloc, something that is a bullhorn to say enough is enough. We don't want a country that supports wars and bombs and destruction. We want to support life. We want to stand up for every single life killed in Gaza. This is the way you can raise our voices. Don't make us even more invisible. Right now, we feel completely neglected and just unseen by our government. If you want us to be louder, then come here and vote uncommitted.
So a call to vote uncommitted rather than voting for President Biden tomorrow by the Democrats. And again, someone from his own party in Congress, Representative Rashida Tlaib, making that call, again, primarily focused on the Biden administration's support for Israel and what is happening in Gaza from the humanitarian standpoint. So that's fascinating. The president also has some other headwinds, and that is some promises not kept in the state of Michigan. Last week, I spoke with political reporter Christine Mui about the semiconductor industry in Michigan. A large chip producer in Michigan, Hemlock Semiconductors, was promised a big tax break touted in the Chips and Science Act from the Biden administration. And now it appears that they are not going to be eligible for those tax breaks. And so you've got places that are sitting vacant in Michigan with promises unkept.
That's a big question still, is how exactly will these chip investments in different states, not just Michigan, how will those play into Biden's messaging ahead of the election? And so it's not clear yet if this is a huge issue for the Democrats, but it is notable that, yes, these are his allies in a swing state.
So that swing state of Michigan. So the president has some headwinds that, again, will not impact him winning tomorrow in Michigan. But if those people choose to stay home in November, then that swing state of Michigan swings a different direction. So I think both Republicans and Democrats have a lot to worry about in the state of Michigan. We'll watch how that all plays out. And we'll also continue to watch the crucial conversations, which are coming right here to the state of Utah with candidate Nikki Haley coming here on Wednesday, all part of that crucial conversation. We'll continue that here on Inside Sources coming up next.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
When was the last time you gave your carpet the love and attention it really deserves?
Not only is your carpet one of the biggest investments in your home, but it's also the biggest air filter in your home. If your carpet hasn't been professionally cleaned, you're breathing in all sorts of nasty dirt, dander, and germs that keep recirculating again and again. Lucky for you, Zero Res is going to spread the love to you and your home with their February special. Don't think vacuuming or DIYing will suffice. Call the pros. Zero Res has over 7,400 Google reviews with a 4.8 rating. This month, it's $33 per room cleaned, plus a fourth room free with promo code 4FREE24. And don't forget about your air ducts. Take $50 off your air duct cleaning with promo code CLEAN-AIR. Call ZeroRes, 866-ZERO-RES, or online at ZeroRes.com and say you want the KSL special, ZeroRes. Spelled backwards or forwards, it's the right way to clean.
The nationally ranked Cougars are on a roll.
Foose dives low, wait, up, and good! Drops it over the 10 for 2.
Tuesday, it's BYU at the Kansas Jayhawks.
Robinson, long three. Oh, man! He just made a 30-footer!
Pregame is at 5 and tip-off at 6. Listen Tuesday, BYU, Kansas Jayhawks on Utah's legacy home of Big 12 basketball and the BYU Cougars. KSL News Radio.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel you attract people who tend to be compulsive or abusive?
Do you have money problems because of someone else's drinking?
Are you afraid or embarrassed to bring your friends home?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
More than half of all adults have a family history of alcoholism.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
My savings are gone.
Okay, where were they last?
Here, right before I spent them on that vacation to Aruba.
Weird.
Not weird. Not saving now means no money later. For free ways to save, go to feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
Our goal every day on Inside Sources is to help you divide the rage from the reason, elevate the conversation, connect the dots, and make the news make sense in your world. We have conversations with great thinkers, with great leaders, and great people who are just out there making a difference in the world. Now, we do talk about politics, but only so we can discuss society and culture. And then we explore society and culture so we can discuss principles and the people in America and the state of Utah who actually live them and apply them every day. We bring the best and brightest minds to the state of Utah, and we love to take the Utah model and send it out to our nation's capital and beyond. Every day on Inside Sources, you'll be part of that conversation. To help you understand things in a different way, we'll get you to think again about what you think you know. But most important, we're going to help you have confidence to have crucial conversations in your community and in your own home.
Join Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson, 1 to 3 on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, a truck exiting I-15 at 21st Street in Ogden sloshed a bunch of drain oil onto the road. That made for a messy cleanup. Second, U of U police caught a man who'd been stealing athletic clothing for months from athletes' locker rooms. And third, there were more attacks by U.S. forces over the weekend against Houthi rebel missile sites in Yemen. Right now, 57 degrees and cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and of course, we've spent a lot of time talking about AI, artificial intelligence. It's pervading every corner of culture, every aspect of business and our personal lives. And by nature, it just keeps growing. The more we interact with it, the more dominant and prevalent it becomes. The question is, what are we teaching it? Because AI, of course, is not unbiased. It knows what it is told. And usually that's what we tell it, by the way. And so as the programming begins to interact in this space of politics and public discourse, it's more important than ever to stay curious and ask better questions about our information and where it's really coming from. Zaya Mohammed, cybersecurity researcher at North Dakota State University's Department of Cybersecurity. Great piece at thehill.com talking about how AI's bias could have an impact on the 2024 election cycle. And welcome to the program.
Hello. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
And so just describe for us a little bit about how AI it continues to evolve, especially when it comes to our political conversations, and what are those questions we should be asking about it as it continues to grow and influence?
Yeah, I recently published an interesting article on the Hill News that is all in the perspective of elections. So first of all, the first thing we must know is that AI was designed to be neutral. It was designed to be objective. And this is what we all are thinking, that it is neutral, it is not biased, but the results are not in the favor of this evidence. What we are seeing is that AI is pushing the biased ideology. Yeah, this can be one reason, because AI, the models, for instance, ChatGPT, Google Bard, and other models, they are trained on data, and everything they produce is based on that data. That can be books, internet resources, text, news media, and articles. So my first perspective that I try to explain is that we should be aware that it is biased, and now we pursue from that for the second evidence that this biased narrative can be used by anyone, because AI is public and anyone can create election campaigns, fake content, and spread these campaigns through social media platforms. You might remember a fake arrest photographs of Biden that was spread all over the internet. That was really crazy. So what about the false audios? What about the false videos, forged identities that we can spread with the use of social media platforms? So this is what I try to explain and cover in this perspective.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for us to recognize that it really is more of an amplification of whatever content it is fed than it is anything else. And so if it's being fed information from a biased perspective, then that's just going to be amplified and extended, and then it reinforces itself. It's sort of a vicious circle as opposed to a virtuous cycle in terms of getting to truth. So as you look at this, as you've done your research, what is it that, as consumers, what do we need to be careful of, especially as we go into a pretty contentious election cycle?
Yeah, this is interesting. First, when I started researching on this, I was really shocked to identify that there are so many reputable journals and websites that have cited these articles in which they show and even prove in some instances that these AI models are biased. So first thing, we need to be aware that these are biased. And second thing, we have to deter, we have to counter these threats, and we have to come up with a solution. So in my article, I also cited two of the major sources. One is Springer Journal of Public Choice, that is a reputable journal with a lot of citations, and they prove that the ideology of ChatGPT is aligned in the left side of political spectrum, and they prove this using various techniques and tactics. And they finally concluded that the AI is specifically the chatbot, which is ChatGPT, is democratic biased. Similarly, another study that I quoted is from MIT, Manchester Institute of Technology. They also claim that this can also be introduced, the biasness from the IT heads. They can push their narrative. So this is something interesting that we need to know, and then we have to combat them.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. It's a great piece. You can check that out at thehill.com. Zaya Mohammed is a cybersecurity researcher at North Dakota State University's Department of Cybersecurity. Thanks so much for joining us today. Great piece on The Hill. And again, you can check that out at thehill.com. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
This is a really important one. The article is so fascinating in the context of, look, what you put in is what you're going to get out, and usually it's going to get amplified and magnified as it goes through and then gets reinforced and repeated and reinforced and repeated again. And so we all have to just be very aware of what we're consuming and where it's coming from. And just because you get something from a chatbot, chat GPT or whatever it may be, you have to be careful because you may think, oh, it's coming through AI, so it's going to be neutral. It's not. The AI language models are not neutral, and they're not objective. They reflect the biases, the ideologies of the data that they're trained on and the people who design and use them. And so you can see that this can become a pretty vicious cycle pretty fast and can get us very far away from the truth, regardless of how you feel about political ideology. The reality is that the way those AI language models function and work, they are not neutral. They're not neutral, and they're not objective. And so, again, it can be based on the data and the ideologies of the data that they're trained on. As Professor Muhammad pointed out, if it's a series of books or articles or videos, all of those things that are being scooped up and sucked in and assimilated by AI, if they're all coming from one particular kind of source or one political persuasion, then that's what they're going to spit back out. And then that's what will get propagated across the internet. So you just have to be careful. You always have to check your sources. You always have to stay curious. If it sounds like it's not quite there, it's probably not quite there. And you have to keep asking questions. You have to stay curious. You have to be willing to go to that next level. Go upstream in terms of the source. Where's that coming from and why? Is there a bias? Is there a motivation? Is there someone trying to persuade you to do something or reject something? Those are all things that we have to do as consumers of the information. The worst thing we can do is become passive and just let it keep coming on in, and then validating it with our clicks and likes and as we scroll through and swipe. So all of those things, I think, are really critical parts of the conversation. No easy answers to any of it because it's so hard to detect. As Professor Muhammad pointed out to us, you start adding in to the AI database deep fakes, photos that have been altered, things that are just clearly not even true, but they've been exploited and repeated over and over on the internet and shared and liked and passed on, then it just perpetuates. And so it's not as easy as just saying, oh, well, this is coming from AI, so of course it's got to be unbiased and neutral. It's far from that. And so that puts much more of a test on each one of us to make sure we're sticking to the truth and doing the hard work and heavy lifting to actually get to the truth. It's never as easy as having it served up for you by an AI platform. All right, we're going to go ahead and step aside for some bottom of the hour news. When we come back, more Inside Sources. We'll go to a very fascinating, unexpected conversation between justices of the Supreme Court from opposite ends of the political spectrum to give you some insight behind the scenes of what those conversations at the Supreme Court actually look like and sound like, and why they actually might be a good model for the rest of us. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. A tanker truck filled with a mixture of fuel and drain oil sloshed a bunch of it out onto the road as it exited I-15 at 21st Street in Ogden. David Reed with the Weber Fire District says that made the road as slick as black ice. He says crews are out trying to make sure none of it got onto the freeway.
The UDOT crew is traveling that road, trying to make sure there's no dangerous areas.
A UDOT sand truck initially covered up the spill, but Reed says a commercial hazmat cleanup company will have to finish the job. University of Utah police have arrested a man they say stole clothing from athletes in several different sports. 22-year-old Brian Mbogo Mbere is now facing charges of burglary and theft. Police say he was spotted on surveillance video a number of times, may have been involved in thefts going back to May of last year. They also said he'd been sleeping in the Hyper building on campus and using the athletes' food pantry. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. During Monday's Pentagon briefing, General Pat Ryder said Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is aware of the death of an active duty Air Force member who set himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy.
The Secretary is following the situation. I know the Air Force has confirmed the airman's death. They do plan to provide additional information 24 hours after next of kin notifications are complete. It certainly is a tragic event.
The Air Force is waiting for the D.C. police, too, to finish their investigation before commenting. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average finishing the trading day down 62 points, the NASDAQ down 20, the S&P 500 was down 19. And our KSL weather looks like a storm moving in tonight that'll drop some snow in the valleys. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
It's a priority for us at this station to bring you all sides of a story and to talk about the news fairly, completely.
Get all the facts and be really aware. Utah's Morning News with us, Tim and Amanda.
Weekday mornings 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Are you stressing about your IRS tax problems? Have you received notices from the IRS threatening to garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, or seize your property? You need an ally. Allies Tax Relief has tax attorneys and enrolled agents that are ready to fight for you. They have saved millions for taxpayers just like you. Allies Tax Relief can help put a stop to IRS collections and, most importantly, negotiate your tax debt. Here's Brenda, a happy client of Allies Tax Relief.
I owed the IRS around $57,000, and they're about to start garnishing my paychecks. I heard a commercial on the radio about Allies Tax Relief, so I thought I'd give them a call. After a day, they were able to at least stop the garnishments, and after a few months of negotiations, I walked away owing the IRS only $301.
If you owe the IRS, call Allies Tax Relief right now for your free consultation. Call 800-647-0499. 800-647-0499. That's 800-647-0499.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors. And did you know that we get a bunch of service calls per year from people who didn't even hire us? That means they originally hired someone else to replace their siding, gutters, and windows. Then later, when a problem popped up, they tried to call their contractor back to fix it, only to find out that the contractor has ceased to exist. They're gone, done, out of business. At RGS Exteriors, we've been serving Utah for 70 years. As a fifth-generation owned contractor, we've got customers who are the grandkids of our customers we had in the 1950s and 60s. We're not going anywhere. We will be here when you need us, period. For siding, gutters, and windows, now and forever, call RGS Exteriors at 801-280-3110 or visit at rgsexteriors.com. That's 801-280-3110 or rgsexteriors.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
So far, so good on the Valley freeways and main secondaries. Right now, not seeing any signs that storm is coming into the valley, but it could happen during your drive home this afternoon. Stay tuned. We'll keep you posted. Wasatch Front businesses and property managers. GoPave Utah provides all asphalt repairs for your parking. For patching and paving along Wasatch Front, contact GoPave Utah Go Pave Utah. GoPaveUtah.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, clouds and rain showers move in for the evening with snow showers expected tomorrow. We could get 2 inches of snow in the valleys, a foot or more in the mountains. Highs will drop into the 30s. And right now, we're mostly cloudy, 59 degrees. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
There was an important conversation that took place during the governor's gathering in Washington, D.C. last week, and it was a conversation between 2 members of the United States Supreme Court. Justice Sonia Sotomayor and Justice Amy Coney Barrett sat down for a conversation mediated by friend of the show, former D.C. Circuit Court Judge Thomas Griffith. The center of the conversation was around civility and politics and how we navigate disagreement. The Supreme Court, of course, regularly deals with the very center of some of the most contentious issues our country faces, and how each of the justices approach their job and their role in interpreting the law and applying it, as well as their theories about the legal system and the different ideas about how to interpret what Congress has done in terms of the laws, or what the executive branch has done, and why and how, and who's overreached and who's within the realm. The question really is the element of the Supreme Court has become so politically hot, and we've talked about this on the show before. I think a lot of the reasons why the Supreme Court has become such a contentious political space is because Congress continues to abdicate its authority and not do its job, and it abdicates it to the executive branch. And so then the administration, whether Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter, both have done this for many, many years. They will take the power that Congress cedes to them, and they'll do things by executive order or by rule within an agency. And when that happens, somebody in America files a lawsuit because they think they shouldn't be able to do that. That should be Congress's job, and then it works its way through the courts and ultimately ends up at the Supreme Court. And that's why so often we see these contentious hearings around Supreme Court justice nominees. This is why those elections for president are often centered on who's going to get to appoint someone to the Supreme Court. The interesting thing is this used to be a non-political thing. I've pointed out on this program before. One Utahn has been on the Supreme Court, Justice Sutherland. And Justice Sutherland was actually nominated to the Supreme Court while he was away in England giving a speech. And before the sun set on the day that he was nominated, he was confirmed by a unanimous vote in the United States Senate. We're a long way from that, even back to Sandra Day O'Connor, which was a 97-0 vote for her confirmation. And now it's become purely political, but there's reasons for that. And sometimes I think that gives us a false perception of what's happening on the court, that these justices wear red and blue robes as opposed to black, that they're part of political parties and systems and establishments as opposed to being judges who sit there to apply and interpret the law. Now, Judge Griffith gave some introductory comments to the audience and talked about the purpose of this conversation. Take a listen.
I would like the American people to get an inside view into how the federal courts do their business. For 15 years, I sat on the D.C. Circuit. I wish the American people could see what I saw. Dedicated people, passionate disagreements, but all done based on reasoned arguments, civility, and respect. And my bet is that after you hear this, you're going to come away thinking at least 2 things. The Supreme Court is an impressive institution. The second one, you're going to be surprised to hear how well they get along, even though they disagree passionately about issues.
So that was the beginning of the conversation, and we always love to hear from Judge Griffith and his insight into how all of this works and He was instrumental in really creating this behind-the-scenes look and conversation between two justices that probably disagree on a lot of things philosophically when it comes to applying the law, but have a lot in common when it comes to the conversations they have behind closed doors. So let's start with Justice Amy Coney Barrett. She stressed the importance of civility when navigating those difficult conversations.
We're in that conference room and it's just the 9 of us. When you're in the flesh and you're having very difficult conversations, you can't just get up and storm away from your computer screen, and you can't just walk away, and you give one another, the benefit of the doubt. You give one another, you assume the best, as my mother used to say to me, and now I say to my kids, you assume the best of the other person, and it makes those difficult conversations much easier to have. Because, we are a pluralistic society. That's what the First Amendment protects, our First Amendment freedoms. And if we can't survive by tolerating differences and learning to compromise and learning to allow one another to express other views, we're going to sink. We won't be able to get anything done as a country.
That was Justice Amy Coney Barrett. And actually, that tied right back into where we started the show today with Todd Davis from Franklin Covey, talking about how do we navigate those difficult conversations. And it starts with that kind of respect and assuming the best of intentions from the other person. Now, for her part, Justice Sonia Sotomayor drew on the legacy of the late conservative Justice Sandra Day O'Connor and her strategy of personal politics to bring people together and to actually get things done.
Sandra Day O'Connor in 1981, when she was appointed to the court, many of you may or may not know that she had been Arizona's Senate leader. And she was renowned for being a politician who got things done, and she got things done by bringing together both sides of the aisle. She would have, I understand, weekly parties at her house. She would insist on lunches together, on other activities together, in the belief that if people got to know each other as people, they would be able to transact business, A, more efficiently, but B, with more open minds. And she turned out to be right, but she introduced a very different ethos on our court, that being collegial with each other was critical.
Justice Sotomayor went on to talk about the modern application. I think this is the crucial part. This application of Justice Sandra Day O'Connor's legacy on the court and discovering ways to get along with each other in order to go back to that founding principle of how do we get the work done for the American people?
We still have disagreements on the court, and we still have fundamental disagreements in how you approach issues. And we don't compromise on those things, but there are ways to take the edge off the disagreement, like narrowing an opinion, deciding to leave a question that's not before you for another case. There are so many, many things that you can do to bring the temperature down and to have you functioning together as a group to getting something done that has a benefit in the law. And so, for me, collegiality is at the center of our ability to work together, where when we disagree, our pens are sharp, but on a personal level, we never translate that into our relationships with one another.
So many crucial lessons there from Justice Sonia Sotomayor, talking about how you get through that, how you navigate it. I loved how Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Barrett, talked about how when you get in the room, you can't just walk away. You can't just push away from your screen or, put some crazy emoji on there or some meme and then walk away and call it good. You have to stay in the room and keep going. Justice Sotomayor suggested that a lot of times what they will do is they will take the edge off. So they'll try to reduce the temperature of the debate or the conversation. Sometimes they'll narrow the scope. I love that. So rather than trying to do a big, sweeping, very contentious ruling, they might just narrow it and narrow the decision to deal with something just very laser-focused, very specific. These are really important things. And as Justice Sotomayor said, keeping the pen sharp on their opinions, but keeping the relation sharp is the key. We're going to stay with this conversation. Stick around. More Inside Sources coming up next.
Guys, did you know your testosterone affects everything in your system, including how you feel and perform every day? Right now, Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City will check your testosterone for free. Knowing your T levels is the first step in understanding if you have low T. Your testosterone level impacts your energy, libido, sleep, weight, hair loss, mood, and even ED. Maintaining an appropriate T level can change your whole life. Most men start to see changes in their hormone levels in their 30s. Experience and results matter. So what are you waiting for? Get your T levels checked today by local, experienced, and trusted men's health experts. They've helped thousands of men since 2011. They're so confident they can help you, they even guarantee it. Call Revive today and schedule your free testosterone test, free exam, and free consultation. Call Revive Men's Health at 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit revivemenshealth.com.
Okay, that's good. Whoa, Dave!
Sorry, I'll go grab some paper towels.
You can't let Dave pour things. He works at JCW's. They fill stuff up past the brim over there, like their milkshakes. They're thick, rich, and oh my gosh.
Delicious?
Oh no. Dave's filling up Crystal's car for her.
Dave, stop!
Hey, this is Clark for JCW. Stop into any of our 5 locations today. We're located in American Fork, Thanksgiving Point, Provo, South Jordan, and our new location in Harriman. Come in and see why at JCW's we believe in quality and a lot of it.
Tonight, The Voice returns for an all-new season on NBC.
With John Legend, Chance the Rapper, and Reba McEntire.
Plus, new coaches Dan and Shay.
Ooh, the first ever duo and the first ever double chair.
Then, a classic game show returns with a huge twist.
It's the premiere of Deal or No Deal Island.
With epic challenges, hidden cases,
and $200 million at stake.
Deal or No Deal Island premieres after the return of The Voice, tonight on NBC.
Then stay tuned for KSL 5 News at 10.
Tonight on KSL, the child care crisis.
Holy cow. We are spending way too much money on child care.
Sound familiar?
We spent $3,150 a month.
And that's only if you get off a wait list.
9 months.
How can struggling families get help? KSL uncovers solutions and changes you may not know about.
More people can be eligible for that child care assistance.
Unaffordable Utah, child care crisis. Tonight on KSL 5 News at 10.
I'm Jason Walton. In business, I mentor hundreds of Utahns as they pursue their American dream. The same dream career politicians treat with contempt. They send our money to our enemies abroad while shortchanging our veterans at home. It's not right. They're letting drug cartels escort criminals and terrorists across our border. It's time to stand up. So I'm running for the United States Senate. Stand with me. I'm Jason Walton, and I approve this message.
Paid for by friends of Jason Walton for Senate.
Dave and Debbie.
I want our listeners to feel like they have an advocate, that they have somebody that's going to fight for them, challenge the status quo or the pithy soundbite. We have a unique job where we have access to interviews and people that not everyone has. We take that seriously. So if we do feel like we're getting a spin, then we can challenge it. I love it when people tell me, I was just thinking about that question that you asked. I'm glad you asked that question. That's like the height of compliment.
I want our listeners to feel empowered to use the information that they've learned on the Dave and Dujanovic show to help their families, to help make good decisions, help investigate other avenues to maybe protect their family's safety or protect their family's money. I'm hopeful our show leaves our listeners with a sense of empowerment so they can make the best decision possible for themselves and for their families.
Listen for Dave and Dujanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
Social Security is with you through life's journey from birth to retirement. As your life changes year to year, so do your needs. For over 80 years, Social Security has helped to meet your needs and is committed to improving access to the services that make a difference in your life. Today, you can verify your earnings, estimate your future benefits, apply for retirement, manage your benefits, and even change your address, all from the comfort of your home. Social Security's online services help put you in control with secure access to your information anytime, anywhere, allowing you to spend more time with family, friends, or simply just enjoying the day. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. See what you can do online at socialsecurity.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. It drove me crazy. It got so bad, I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't concentrate. I absolutely refused to let any of my friends come to our house for any reason. I would have been humiliated if anyone found out how much my dad drank and how loud my mom screamed at him. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful. The only thing that happened is my mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. Her relationship with my dad really changed. I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I wanted to see if I could have a better relationship with my dad. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
Jeff Kaplan. I'm energized by breaking news. First of all, because it's right now, and second of all, because in many cases the audience needs to know. There's no more important service that we can provide, and I find it critically important to get more details to the audience as quickly as possible. There's nothing more energizing than that for me. Not at all. The most important thing we do is breaking news. I am gratified that so many people listen to me every afternoon on KSL, but what they don't know is that there are so many people behind the scenes making it happen, checking on the traffic, answering the phones, making the calls, talking to the newsmakers. They're out in the street, into the field to get the raw information, and then putting it all together so that I can sit in front of a microphone and be a source of information every afternoon. But there are so many people who make it happen. That's what you don't know.
Ride Home with Jeff Kaplan, weekdays 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, firefighters and UDOT crews had to deal with a messy oil spill in Ogden. Second, a man accused of stealing clothes from UU athletes for months has been arrested now. And third, the man who set himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy was an active duty Air Force member. Right now, 59 degrees and cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as it always is. I am Boyd Matheson, and if you're just joining us, we spent the last segment of the show going through just a delightful conversation between two Supreme Court justices, Amy Coney Barrett and Sonia Sotomayor. They have very different philosophies and perspectives when it comes to their job on the Supreme Court and how they interpret the Constitution and apply the law. But they had an important conversation with our friend, Judge Thomas Griffith, back in Washington, D.C., as part of the Governors Association meetings last week. And they gave some really great insight into why the Supreme Court is actually a great model for how we can have better conversations in the country. And I know at first blush you think, wait a minute, that's where all the division is. All the hot button issues are before the Supreme Court. And while that's true, the reason most of those things are before the court is because Congress has failed to do its job or the executive branch has overreached. So usually they're fixing things, and that's really not supposed to be their job. They're not supposed to fix what Congress did or didn't do or did poorly, nor what the executive branch did or didn't do, either by executive order or by agency overreach. But the interesting thing to me is they have a process, and that process matters and is very instructive for all of us in approaching contentious issues. So let's go back to this conversation. Justice Amy Coney Barrett spoke on the differences and the important difference and distinction between our political system and the process of the Supreme Court in analyzing and discussing crucial issues.
We don't have press conferences and that sort of thing. So really, the product of our work is the opinion. If you want to know what the court's reasoning is, you have to look at the opinion because it explains the decision. Last year, there was the student loan case, and I joined the Chief's majority opinion, and Justice Sotomayor joined Justice Kagan's dissent. There was a vigorous debate in the country about the student loan forgiveness program, but the opinion didn't mirror that debate. It wasn't about whether loan forgiveness is a good thing or a bad thing or a desirable thing or not. It was about the scope of a statute.
So that's really important because we so often get lost in the political discussion of all of these things that we don't go back to the process, the principles, and the policies that are the center of it all. And that's what we have to get back to. Now, I want to go to her counterpart on this panel, Justice Sonia Sotomayor. And this is really telling. I want you to listen really closely to this. Justice Sotomayor talked about the damage that political parties have had on the reputation and perception of the Supreme Court and how the Supreme Court works.
I think the worst thing that's happened to the judiciary is political parties. We don't come into this work as a Republican or a Democrat. We don't even come to it as an originalist or a plain text. You come into it as a judge who believes that our job is to find the best answer to the legal questions that the court is presented with. And so I think that's sacred to almost all of us. And remember, thankfully, for us, presidents don't last that long, right? There's 8 years. So for us to be beholden to one of them is a little crazy, you know? No, seriously, there is built into the system a protection, which is lifetime appointment, that should give us the freedom to grow as we grow in the job as well.
I love that perspective from Justice Sonia Sotomayor, that it's not what we think. It's so easy for us to say, oh, well, you know, that justice was appointed by President Trump or President Obama or President Bush or President Biden, and that somehow they have an allegiance to that president or to that political party that put them on the bench. And it just doesn't work that way. I love the fact that Justice Sotomayor said, isn't it great that presidents only last a maximum of 8 years? So there can't be any allegiance there. It has to be to the law. It has to be to the job of being a justice on the Supreme Court. And I think that's a crucial part of it. And it's so easy to lose that. And I think Justice Sotomayor was absolutely right that part of the big hit to the reputation and perception of the Supreme Court is because of political parties and because both Republicans and Democrats have decided that rather than try to persuade and influence, the best way to do things is to file a lawsuit and then let it work its way through the courts and ultimately end up at the Supreme Court. And that's why things seem so politically contentious on the court. But I love how both of these justices pointed out that they have rigorous debate, that they have great disagreements, that they sharpen their pens, but they don't get to personal attacks. Justice Barrett said, we don't call for a press conference to call out those that we disagreed with on the last case or on a current ruling or something that's presently before the court. They get together. They go